I used to think betrayal smelled like cheap cologne and late-night texts. Turns out it smells exactly like a barely used designer perfume bottle, missing just enough liquid to suggest a secret life, but not enough to raise suspicion from someone less observant. I always thought Lorna's obsession with hosting the perfect event was harmless until I saw a $400 line item for custom hand-stamped place cards on a budget that hadn't even paid for the damn chairs yet. And in case fate wanted to underline the punchline, I found her voice echoing through the house one Tuesday afternoon, not in person, but bouncing off the living room walls from an open Zoom window on her iMac. She was supposed to be at the florist, picking hydrangeas. Instead, she was sprawled in her home office, legs crossed like a queen, cooing into her screen. "Tell me again what you'd do to me if Gerald weren't such a saint." I didn't interrupt. I stood there, out of frame, staring at the reflection of her screen in the hallway mirror, because sometimes mirrors tell you more truth than people ever will. She had that laugh on. You know the one, half whisper, half hormone. The one I hadn't heard since the Bush administration. She giggled and leaned in like a high schooler on a prank call, twisting a lock of her hair as if it hadn't gone gray 2 years ago. The man on the screen, let's just call him M, leaned back in his leather chair like a CEO of something useless, his voice syrupy and smug. He said, "Don't worry, babe. He's too busy being Mr. Community to notice." And Lorna, God bless her, raised a wine glass in the middle of the damn workday and said, to hiding in plain sight. She didn't even use a coaster. It would have been easier if I'd felt rage, or even heartbreak. But no, what I felt was sharper, quieter, like a scalpel being unwrapped in a sterile room. 20 years of marriage boiled down to a hallway mirror and a muted Zoom. I walked back out the door, soundless as a ghost, and sat in my car with the engine off, staring at the hedges I trimmed every Sunday like a loyal, middle-aged shrub whisperer. That's when the itch began. Not the kind that screams for confrontation, but the kind that asks questions. How long? How deep? How stupid had I been? And more importantly, how careful could I be? That evening, I told her she looked radiant, that the caterer loved her spreadsheet, that I was lucky to have a wife who cared so deeply about the Children's Hospital fundraiser. She smiled like a woman who believed her performance was airtight. But what she didn't know was that I had spent the afternoon reviewing specs for discrete home audio systems, designed not for music, but for clarity of conversation. I had already chosen the model. It would blend into the bookshelves and record on a private loop. Just in case this wasn't a one-time Zoom call. Just in case M liked to talk dirty in Dolby Surround. There was no fight. No accusation. I played dumb with the elegance of a man preparing to be underestimated. That week, while she bragged about linen colors and floral centerpieces, I was mapping out microphone placement with the precision of a man who once balanced the regional budget for a 7-branch banking network. There was a tone in her voice now, one I hadn't registered before, a bit too smug, a bit too rehearsed. Every compliment came with a side of distance. Every plan included her and someone unnamed, never me. And then there was the text. The one she left open on her phone like a booby trap. It read, Thursday. Usual place. Bring the folder. No name. Just a heart emoji and the assumption that I was too old, too trusting, too docile to decode it. But I didn't touch the phone. I memorized it. Time, date, phrase. Usual place. I had a feeling that wasn't a flower shop. She was in bed by 10, snoring like innocence in silk. I sat in the darkened living room, eyes on the hallway mirror, replaying the angle where her laptop had cast the reflection. The same mirror where, 15 years ago, I watched her practice a speech about love and legacy for a donor brunch. Back when she still talked to me like I was in the room, not just in the way. That's the night it changed. That's the night I stopped thinking like a husband and started thinking like a banker. A man who understood the value of timing, leverage, and proof. Because if she was going to bet against me, she'd need to learn something about compound interest, how every little lie, left to grow in silence, eventually becomes a bomb with perfect timing. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, but somewhere along the way, her lips stopped landing. It was more of a gesture than an act, like pressing a stamp that had long since run out of ink. I kept telling myself it was just stress. The fundraiser was big this year, the biggest one yet. She said the hospital board wanted a record-breaking turnout, and I wanted to believe that meant long nights and bigger plans, not lies and lipstick I didn't recognize. The first time she mentioned needing space, she was standing in our kitchen at 7 a.m., slicing mango with surgical precision. She didn't look up when she said it. Just let the word hang there in the scent of citrus and cold detachment. Space. I repeated like it was a foreign term. Just mental space, she clarified. I need a little time in my own head. That's all. I smiled and said I understood. I didn't, but I wanted to. She began taking walks after dinner. At first, I offered to go with her. She said no, that it was her time to clear her thoughts. I watched her walk down the street through the blinds, phone in hand, thumb moving faster than anyone texting their sister. Eventually, the walk started happening before dinner, then instead of dinner, then sometimes at midnight. Her gym routine changed, too. She used to hit the elliptical and come home sweaty and smiling. Now she came back dry, flushed in the cheeks, and smelling faintly of men's body wash. Not strong, just enough. Her excuses were airtight. They added aromatherapy towels, she'd say with a laugh. You'd love them. But I never got invited. One afternoon, I noticed her car had been washed, waxed, and detailed immaculately. We hadn't done that in years. The scent of new leather hit me like a riddle. Why clean something so obsessively unless you want it to reflect something or someone? There was a pair of sunglasses in the cup holder. Men's aviators. Polarized. Not mine. When I asked, she told me she found them in a donation bin she was organizing for the gala. Left behind, she said, almost convincingly. I nodded, walked back inside, and wrote the brand name down in my planner. She started saying, I more than we. I think I'll go away next weekend. I need to spend some time alone to recharge. I've been neglecting myself for too long. When I asked if she wanted company, her answer was gentle but firm. Always no. You wouldn't enjoy it, she'd say. It's all workshops and guided reflection. The brochures she left on the kitchen counter were vague. Nature photos. Smiling women in yoga poses. One had the phrase, unlocking feminine potential, in soft italics. I opened her laptop when she was out once. Just once. But the browser history was wiped cleaner than her conscience. She started keeping it password protected after that, as if I'd asked for access. I hadn't. At dinner, she would ask about my day like a teacher checking boxes. Her responses were canned. That's nice. You always give so much. They're lucky to have you. But there was no follow-up. No real interest. Her eyes would drift toward her phone, her fork, the candle wax sliding down the side of the holder. I once mentioned a problem at work. A colleague misallocating funds, and she blinked, smiled faintly, and said, You always get so emotionally involved in these things. It felt like being dismissed by someone who used to pray with you before bed. Then came the financial fog. Small discrepancies. A boutique spa charge in a town she'd never mentioned visiting. A florist invoice 3 times the usual price. I asked gently, half hoping for a good reason. She said it was all gala prep, hush-hush VIP touches to impress the big donors. Trust me, she said, resting a hand on my arm like a campaign slogan. You'll be proud when you see it all come together. I wanted to be proud, but my pride had started to rust. She made her Instagram private. Just flipped the switch one day. I wasn't blocked, but I couldn't see anything new. Privacy's healthy, she told me when I asked. I'm trying to be less performative. I stared at her while she said it, trying to remember when exactly she'd learned to weaponize psychology. She used to share everything. Now she curated her life like a museum exhibit, open to the public, except for me. And yet, she never stopped smiling. That's what made it so disorienting. She smiled through breakfast, smiled while booking events, smiled even when she told me she might want to reassess some of our roles after the gala. She didn't yell. She didn't rage. She just calmly erased me, one smile at a time, as if my presence were a pencil line in a design she no longer needed. I didn't know if I was being paranoid or perceptive. I didn't know if love meant trusting her or trusting what I saw. But the truth was, I was starting to see something terrifying. She had created a life where I still existed, but only as background furniture. Polished, present, completely uninvited to the conversations that mattered. And still, I didn't say a word. I kissed her back in the mornings. I made her tea. I nodded at her updates about floral counts and chair covers. Because when you've built a house on trust, you don't start swinging a hammer at the walls just because one light flickers. You wait. You watch. And when the cracks finally spread all the way to the foundation, then you plan your demolition. It happened on a Thursday, one of those days where the world seems so boring it almost dares you to pay attention. I had come home early from the bank after a power outage shuttered our branch for the afternoon. I didn't call to let her know. I figured I'd surprise her, maybe catch a glimpse of the woman I married. The one who used to hum while sorting laundry and asked about my blood pressure like she meant it. But when I walked in, the house wasn't empty, just silent in that way that isn't silence at all, just a pause before something unholy. Her keys were on the hook, her shoes by the door, but no Lorna. The back patio door was cracked open, just an inch. I moved through the kitchen quietly, not out of stealth, but instinct. That's when I heard it, soft, filtered, disarming. Her voice. Not the voice she used with me, the clipped practical one that asked if I'd remembered to grab celery or pay the heating bill. This voice was syrup. "You're so bad," she whispered, and then she giggled, breathy and warm. I stopped moving, didn't even breathe. From where I stood, I could see through the dining room window to the back patio where she sat on the outdoor couch, barefoot, her knees curled under her, phone held between both hands like a teenage crush. I stepped to the side, staying in the shadows of the house, and listened. "He's so predictable," she said, and then paused, listening. I couldn't hear his voice, but I didn't need to. I swear, he could win a trophy for obliviousness. She laughed again, then added, "No, I don't think he suspects a thing. Honestly, he's just there. Like wallpaper." I think the word that got me wasn't oblivious or predictable. It was wallpaper. I'd been reduced from husband to background. Something glanced at, maybe once, then ignored for years. She went on, still smiling, her voice fluttering with amusement I hadn't heard in years. Amusement not meant for me. "The best part," she said, "he still makes my tea every morning. Like some loyal golden retriever. It's almost sweet." She tilted her head, lips parted like she was listening to a joke on the other end. Then she added something I'd never forget. "I think he still loves me. It's kind of sad, kind of useful." That was the moment. Not the affair itself, not even the deception. It was hearing my own love used like a prop, a utility, a fool's gesture folded into someone else's game. I didn't move, didn't cough, didn't let the screen door creak open. I simply backed up, step by step, until I was in the hallway again, then the bedroom, where I closed the door without a sound and sat on the edge of the bed. I stared at the dresser she insisted we keep from her grandmother's house. I looked at the clock. 3:42 p.m. That's the minute I stopped being a husband and started being something else entirely. I wasn't angry, not in the loud way. I felt no urge to punch a wall or scream or demand answers. I felt a kind of stillness, heavy and sharp, like the moment a dam cracks before the flood. And in that stillness, a thought settled in. I had been living with an actress. No, a strategist. Every compliment, every guilt trip, every "you're so good to me" had been designed. She wasn't just cheating. She was harvesting. My loyalty, my habits, my silence. All of it turned into assets in her little performance. I saw it then. I saw the entire play. How she'd curated this version of me to her lover. The loyal husband. The clueless idiot. The safe bet. How she probably laughed after our dinners, mimicking my routine bedtime phrases for entertainment. I stood up, walked to my closet, and pulled out the manila folder I'd started 3 weeks ago. Inside, receipts, screenshots, a copy of the budget she submitted to the gala committee, complete with line items that didn't match the bank statements I'd quietly pulled from her laptop while she slept. I added one more item, a voice recorder. It was in my coat pocket, running the entire time I stood by that window. Clean audio. Her voice, every word. I slid it into the folder like a final piece of a puzzle. Then I placed the folder back in the safe, locked it, and turned off the light. From that point forward, I wasn't interested in explanations. I wasn't seeking closure. I was collecting evidence. I was building a case. Not for court, but for the moment when I would make sure she watched every lie fall like dominoes in the very room she decorated for public praise. That day, I made tea like always. I smiled when she came back inside, barefoot and glowing. She kissed me on the cheek and said she needed a shower. I nodded and said, "You're glowing today." She winked. Must be the sun. I smiled wider. Because the sun was setting, and she had no idea what was coming with the dark. I became invisible by choice. I didn't sulk or pout or grow distant. I leaned into every word she said, every plan she shared, every meaningless detail she offered, nodding with the soft, reliable face of the man she thought she still owned. But behind that calm, I was running calculations. The first move was minor. I offered to help manage a few of the gala logistics to lighten her load. She smiled, flattered, handed me access to a shared spreadsheet, never once suspecting that I had already mirrored her email activity to a secondary device. Every guest list, vendor receipt, and backchannel message came through my phone like a direct feed from her performance. I didn't confront her about the spa weekend she booked with a Visa gift card. Not once, but I did call the spa myself, using a neutral tone, claiming to verify a booking on behalf of my boss's wife. The front desk confirmed she hadn't booked under her real name. Lorna used her maiden name. That told me everything I needed to know about how practiced she'd become. The next step was the florist. I offered to pay the invoice directly since we had a rewards card. She paused, just for a second, then said it had already been taken care of through the hospital's fund. That was lie number 3. I checked the event account later that night. No payment had gone out. What had gone out was $750 from our personal account, labeled under miscellaneous admin. I didn't ask. I just flagged it. Pattern recognition was always my specialty. At the bank, I was the one who caught a $10,000 fraud operation based on how one comma was misaligned in a series of transfers. At home, the fraud was in her smile. I installed a second microphone, this one inside a decorative lantern on the patio. She had her calls out there, always barefoot, always sipping wine like it was a holy ritual. The first few nights, nothing. Just chatter about gala colors, donor relations, how the band needed a quieter generator. But then one night, around 11 p.m., her voice dropped. "I think I can get another check out of him this week," she said. "I'll say it's for vendor deposits. He doesn't even ask anymore." I could hear the clink of glass, her laughter following his murmur through the speaker. "God, you're bad," she giggled. Then silence. Then a whisper, "I want to meet you again. Not at the cabin. He's been twitchy lately. Maybe the lakeside condo." That word, condo, sat wrong. We didn't own one. I searched every transaction in our history, every account I could access without triggering an alert. Nothing. But then I remembered her friend, Sharon, had mentioned once that Lorna had a viewing up near Lake Ashton months ago. I checked her calendar backup. A fake appointment, tagged board review. That was the day. The next morning, I told her I had a banking seminar out of state. She smiled with just a little too much relief. I left, looped around, and followed her best friend instead, Sharon, the one who always posted selfies with wine and hashtags like #GirlSoDreamBig. Sharon didn't notice me, but she led me straight to a brunch spot on the other side of town, one I'd never heard Lorna mention. I parked a block away, waited, and at 10:43 a.m., Lorna arrived. Not in her usual SUV, but in a rental. Sunglasses on, hair curled. She hugged Sharon. Then a man walked in, business casual, tan, too young to know better. She touched his wrist as they talked. A flicker of the same smile I saw at our wedding reception, when she leaned over and whispered that the best things in life are shared in secret. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't take photos. I didn't need to. What mattered wasn't catching her. It was knowing how far the rot had spread. That evening, when she returned home claiming she'd been locked in committee meetings, I asked how Sharon was. Her pause was microseconds short of panic. "Oh," she said. "She's good. Busy with work." I nodded. "Funny," I said. "She texted me a photo of you two at brunch." She blinked, then smiled. "Yeah, we bumped into each other. Totally unplanned." I smiled back. Small world. She never realized I hadn't even taken my phone out all day. That was my trap. Offer her a chance to lie even when she didn't need to. And she took it. Again. At night, I began backing up everything, recordings, spreadsheets, cross-referenced invoices, into a hidden cloud drive, labeled under a fake project name. I mapped every deviation from her official story. I traced every lie to its origin point. She wasn't just having an affair. She was laundering my trust through a campaign of subtle manipulations. It wasn't about sex. It was about power. About using my reputation as a shield while she rewrote the script behind my back. She had built a stage and cast me as the reliable fool. But what she didn't realize, what she never would, is that I had rewritten the ending. Not with violence. Not with chaos. With timing. Because revenge, like finance, is about letting interest accrue until the balance is undeniable. And when the moment came, when the lights were brightest and the applause loudest, that's when I'd pull the curtain. Quietly. Publicly. Without ever raising my voice. It was the gala night, the crescendo of her carefully composed symphony of lies, and she was electric. dressed in emerald green, laughing just a little too loudly, shaking hands with men who stared at her a beat too long while their wives looked away. The ballroom shimmered with money and self-congratulation. Donors milled beneath chandeliers, sipping champagne and admiring the silent auction table, completely unaware that a different kind of unveiling was about to take place. I stood near the entrance, perfectly polite, perfectly still, scanning the crowd like an accountant balancing a ledger. When she spotted me, she floated over with a kiss on the cheek and a whisper of thanks for helping make tonight perfect. I nodded and told her the AV team wanted her in the green room for a sound check. She didn't question it. Why would she? I had always been the man behind the curtain. She walked ahead of me, heels clicking, and as we stepped into the smaller staging area behind the main ballroom, the lights dimmed as if the room itself knew what was coming. On the table sat a laptop, angled slightly upward. She glanced at it, confused. "What's this?" she asked. I clicked play. Her voice filled the space, not live, but recorded, crisp, undeniable. "He's so predictable. I think he still loves me. It's kind of sad. Kind of useful." She froze, then turned slowly, the gala lights casting shadows across her now pale face. "Where did you get that?" she asked, voice tightening. I let the silence answer. "It's not what you think," she tried, stepping forward. "You took that completely out of context." I blinked once. She tried again. "We were just joking. You know how people talk when they've had a drink. You said that at 10:14 a.m., I said calmly. "On a Tuesday." Her jaw clenched. "All right," she muttered. "Yes, I've been talking to someone. But it wasn't physical. It was just emotional. I was lonely, Gerald. You've been so distant lately." She folded her arms. "You spend more time with spreadsheets than you do with me." I looked at her, not with anger, but something colder, clarity. "You made me into wallpaper," I said. "Not because I faded, but because you stopped seeing value in anything that didn't flatter you." She scoffed, sharp and brittle. "You always need to be the victim, don't you? Always so noble. So above it all. I bet you even rehearse this little moment in your head." Her eyes glinted. "You want to humiliate me? Go ahead. You've got your precious proof. Congratulations. But let me tell you something, everyone in that ballroom? They're here because of me. They see me, not you. I am the reason they opened their checkbooks. You think you can just waltz in and destroy that with one recording?" She smiled, but her voice cracked. "You're not strong enough." I walked over to the laptop and tapped the trackpad. The next clip began. Her voice again, soft, conspiratorial. "I can get another check out of him this week. I'll say it's for vendor deposits. He doesn't even ask anymore." The air went silent. She didn't speak this time, just stared at the screen as if she could will it into non-existence. "That's embezzlement," I said quietly. "In front of donors. On behalf of a hospital." Her face collapsed in slow motion, from contempt to panic. "You wouldn't." "I already have," I interrupted. "But I didn't go to the board. Not yet. I thought you might want one final moment to tell the truth before the truth tells itself." Her breath hitched. "You don't get to do this to me," she hissed. "I built this. I carried you for years while you played the good guy and let everyone think you were some quiet saint. You're a coward." I stepped closer, voice low, steady. "No, I'm a mirror. And tonight, you get to see yourself." She turned away, as if that might end the moment, but the weight of it clung to her shoulders. Her arms folded again, tighter this time, as if she could hold herself together by force. I said nothing more. I let the silence press down on her, a judgment heavier than any outburst could offer. Outside the door, the music swelled as guests settled into their seats. Her name would be called soon. She'd have to walk on stage, smile wide, deliver a speech about community and compassion. But now she knew. Every eye on her might be one that's already heard the recording, already whispered to the person beside them, already started connecting dots she thought were buried. She didn't move. Neither did I. We stood there, two ghosts in a room filled with proof. And though no one else knew it yet, her entire kingdom had just burned to ash. She followed me out of the green room like a storm in heels, her voice already rising before the door had even closed behind us. "You ambushed me," she hissed, grabbing my arm like she had some right to hold on to anything. "You humiliated me on my night. Do you even understand what you've done?" I didn't answer. I just kept walking. The hallway was narrow, the carpet muffled our steps, and every time I didn't turn around, her panic grew louder. "Say something, damn it," she snapped. "You think you're some kind of hero? Some noble crusader?" I stopped, finally, just outside the staff kitchen, and turned to face her. Her makeup was perfect, her hair flawless, but her eyes, Her eyes were chaos barely strapped in. You lied, I said quietly. You manipulated. You stole. That's what I've done. I let you show yourself. She blinked hard, the way someone does when they expect anger and get silence instead. I was drowning, she snapped. Do you even get that? I was invisible in this marriage. You think doing the dishes and being decent makes you a husband? You smothered me with your silence. I didn't flinch. You wanted an audience. I gave you one. That hit something. Her face twisted, lips curling like a threat. She wasn't ready to cash in. You were boring, she spat. Always so predictable. Wake up. Work. Smile like a doormat. You made me feel like I was married to a spreadsheet. And you made me wish I was, I said, calm as a closed ledger. Spreadsheets don't lie to your face and ask for more money. She laughed then, short, bitter, a sound filled with splinters. You think you're better than me now? Because you played the quiet victim until the big reveal? Pathetic. You're still that scared little man who double-checks grocery receipts and thinks loyalty is enough to keep someone like me. I stepped closer. Not fast. Not threatening. Just enough to make her breath catch. Someone like you? I repeated. You mean someone who trades trust for attention and calls it empowerment? Her mouth opened. No words came. You think I didn't know who you were when I married you? I continued. I did. I just believed you were better than your worst instincts. Turns out, you believed you were smarter than your own lies. Her voice cracked. You never saw me. Not really. I saw you. I said, soft and brutal. I just stopped worshiping the version you built for everyone else. She looked down then, hands trembling slightly, but only for a second. You think people will believe you over me? She asked, quieter now, dangerous in a different way. You think they won't see this as jealousy? Sabotage. I tilted my head. I don't need them to believe me. I just need them to hear you. Her eyes darted, calculating, always looking for a new weapon, a new way to twist the narrative. You don't get to walk away clean. You don't get to turn your back and pretend this was all me. I'm not pretending, I said. I'm just finished. That shook her more than anything else had. Not the evidence, not the audio, not even the knowledge that her private theater had become public. It was the stillness in me now, the absence of reaction. She had always fed on responses, positive or negative, admiration or rage. But now I was blank, clean, untouchable. She stepped closer, lowered her voice, tried the last card she had. You'll regret this. We had something. Maybe it was broken, but it was real. And you're throwing it away for what? Revenge. I looked at her, really looked, at the desperate curve of her mouth, the tension in her jaw, the fear hiding behind the performance. No, I said. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm finally putting it down. She stared at me, silent now, waiting for something to change, my posture, my voice, my eyes. But nothing did. And in that absence, she understood. She couldn't reach me. Not anymore. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need her shame. I didn't even need her to explain. Because when you've already buried the body of your love, the screams of the guilty just sound like noise. And I was done listening. The moment I walked out of that gala, I stopped being her husband and started being her architect of collapse. Every step I took after that night was part of a blueprint she couldn't see, drafted in silence and executed with the patience of a man who had waited too long to be underestimated. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to break anything. I had the most powerful weapon on earth, the truth and time. First, I secured everything. Our joint accounts, split and locked. She woke up 3 days later to a banking dashboard that showed her name and a balance of $14.37. The rest had been shifted legally through a quiet emergency consultation with my personal advisor, who had already filed a protective claim citing financial misconduct. The car? In my name. Title transferred. GPS tracker activated. I parked it at my office and left the keys with security. The house, bought under a marital trust one had funded years ago, and she had never bothered to read the documents closely enough to realize she wasn't named on the deed. All utilities? Reassigned. Her credit cards? Canceled. But not before I tagged the final charge, a $600 dinner for two at the same lakeside condo she once tried to keep off the books. I didn't confront her. I let her call the bank. I let her listen to the hold music while she tried to explain to a customer service rep why a card with her name suddenly belonged to a trust account. Meanwhile, I uploaded everything, every recording, every falsified expense sheet, every invoice mismatch, into a clean cloud folder and shared it with 3 specific contacts: her HR director, the hospital board's financial ethics chair, and Sharon, her friend who smiled for selfies and said nothing. I didn't frame it as revenge. I framed it as accountability. For your awareness, the email read. Attached are materials that may be relevant to the ongoing management of donor funds. I didn't add a signature. The data spoke for itself. Then I called her mother. Not out of malice, out of clarity. Her mother had once told me, years ago, if she ever drifts, you anchor her. She's got a sharp mind but a shaky compass. So I told her gently, firmly, what her daughter had done. Not all of it. Just enough. The betrayal, the manipulation, the misuse of funds tied to a children's hospital. I told her I wasn't seeking sympathy. I was just preparing the fallout. Her mother didn't cry. She just whispered, I always hoped she'd outgrow her hunger. Next was the attorney, not loud, not litigious. Just efficient. Divorce papers prepped, grounds listed plainly. Financial misconduct, breach of trust. No court. Just a clean division with asset protection clauses. She would get the furniture. She'd keep her clothes. But the image she built? The reputation? That was already burning. I contacted our accountant and initiated a full audit of our joint taxes for the last 5 years. Anything questionable? Flagged and reported. I wanted a clean slate, not just emotionally, but legally. The best part? She didn't see any of it coming. For days, she walked around the house like a woman trying to remember which parts of her life were still real. She asked if I'd called the bank. I told her I hadn't, which was true. My lawyer did. She asked why her work email was acting strange. I told her maybe IT was doing updates. She asked why Sharon wasn't returning her texts. I shrugged. I made breakfast like always. I watered the plants. I even drove her to a networking mixer, knowing full well she'd walk in smiling and find 3 people already whispering in the corner about irregularities in the gala fund distribution. Every move I made was surgical. Every step of hers fell into place like I had choreographed it. Not because she was stupid, but because she was arrogant. She thought I was done. She thought the confrontation was the peak. She had no idea that I had only just begun. Because I didn't want vengeance. I wanted freedom. And the only way to get it was to make sure she couldn't twist the truth once it all came crashing down. She started asking questions too late. Did you change the passwords? She asked one night, her voice too soft to be casual. No, I replied. You just don't have access anymore. She blinked. That's the same thing. No, I said. It's the difference between being locked out and never being invited back. Her hand trembled on her wine glass. That was new. She always drank with elegance, like the world existed to orbit her. But now she looked like someone waiting for the next floor to collapse. And I had more floors lined up than she could count. Because revenge isn't about the moment. It's about the structure. And I had built mine brick by brick, out of every smile she faked, every lie she spun, every time she thought I wasn't watching. She still believed she could fix it. That's how I knew the end would be beautiful. Because she had no idea she was already living in it. It was the following Friday, a week after the gala, when everything came to a head. I had arranged for us to attend a follow-up donor brunch hosted by the hospital's auxiliary board, a casual event, softer lighting, frittatas instead of filet mignon, but with all the same players in attendance. Doctors, donors, board members, volunteers, all dressed in spring linen and polite conversation. Lorna dressed in pastel silk, earrings swinging like confidence on a string, oblivious to the weight of what I'd already set in motion. As we entered the room, she gave me that familiar, performative squeeze on the arm, the one that said, "We're still the perfect couple, right?" I offered no resistance, let her guide us in like always. But something changed almost immediately. Heads didn't turn. Eyes didn't meet hers. The air stiffened the way it does when people are waiting for someone to explode and hoping it's not today. Sharon was the first to approach, cool, polite, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Hi, Gerald," she said, shaking my hand warmly. "It's good to see you." Then she turned to Lorna, gave a barely there nod, and excused herself with a sip of her mimosa. That was the first crack. Lorna blinked, glanced after her, and gave a tight, confused smile. "Weird," she whispered. "She's usually more talkative." I didn't answer. Because by then, more people had noticed. More glances. Some too long. Some paired with murmurs. Lorna adjusted her neckline, straightened her posture, pushed her hair behind her ear like she was resetting her control of the room. But the room had already shifted. We took our seats at a long table set with name cards. Hers wasn't there. Mine was. The head of the hospital board walked by, nodded at me with a respectful gravity, then kept walking. Didn't even look at her. She looked at me then, just for a second. Did you do something? She asked, trying to laugh. Did you say something to someone? I sipped my coffee. You'll want to check your email, I said quietly. She stared, then pulled out her phone under the table. Her hands moved quickly, unlocking the screen, scanning. Then she froze. Whatever she saw on that screen, the forwarded emails, the donor spreadsheet with her falsified vendor payments, the audio clip embedded in the attachments, it hit her all at once. Her face drained color like a watercolor bleeding under a storm. You sent this? She whispered. To all of them? I didn't look at her. They deserve transparency, I said. You used their generosity to fund your lies. She was still holding the phone, but now it trembled. Her voice dropped to a hiss. You're ruining my life. No, I said. I'm just turning the lights on. At that moment, the chairwoman stepped to the front of the room to thank attendees and address a recent matter involving fiscal clarity. Every head turned toward her. Lorna froze in place. Her smile was gone. Her fingers dug into the edge of the tablecloth like it was the only thing keeping her anchored. The chairwoman spoke carefully, professionally, confirming that the board had been made aware of significant discrepancies in the event expenditures, that an internal review was underway, and that those responsible would be held to the highest standards of accountability. No names, no specifics, but every eye in the room was on her now. A ripple moved through the crowd, the shared realization, the whispers confirming what many had already suspected. Lorna tried to rise from her seat, then sat back down, visibly shaking. Her voice came out thin, fake casual. This is ridiculous. They're overreacting. They don't know the full story. I can explain, but her voice cracked mid-sentence, and the smile she tried to summon died halfway up her face. She turned to me, eyes wild now. You think this makes you the good guy? She snapped under her breath. You think they'll forget everything I built just because you sent some spreadsheet with, and then, across the room, her lover arrived. Alone. Not with her. Not smiling. He caught her gaze, stopped, and immediately turned around and left without a word. No explanation. No rescue. Just retreat. The final pillar of her illusion collapsed in front of her like a sandcastle hit by a wave. Her hand flew to her mouth. She looked at me again, pleading now. Please. You've made your point. Don't let them destroy me. We can fix this. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. My silence was a mirror, and in it, she saw exactly what she'd become. She turned back toward the room, tried to laugh again, but the sound came out broken, like a hinge tearing off. No one laughed with her. Not one. Her social circle, curated and cultivated for years, stared through her like smoke. She looked around, one last time, for anyone who might speak in her defense. No one moved. And then she saw me still sitting, still calm, watching. Not with anger. Not with pity. Just presence. Her eyes locked onto mine. And I could see the moment her heart finally broke, not because of guilt, but because she realized I was still there, unmoved, untouchable, and she was utterly alone. The explosion came the next day, not in a courtroom or a private kitchen argument, but in the one place she thought she could still control, her parents' anniversary party, hosted in their pristine backyard under a rented white canopy with violinists, monogrammed cupcakes, and a guest list filled with former neighbors, family friends, and colleagues still trying to decide which version of Lorna to believe. I showed up in a gray suit in silence. She didn't expect me to come. I wasn't on the official RSVP list. Her eyes met mine from across the yard as her father, a man who once toasted us as the example of real marriage, stood stiffly by the champagne table pretending to be busy. Her mother avoided eye contact entirely. I saw Sharon standing by the caterer, arms crossed, eyes hard. She knew. They all knew. And still, Lorna smiled, that brittle, performative grin she had worn through every lie, and floated over with her heels clicking like warning shots. You've made your point, she hissed under her breath. You've humiliated me. You've poisoned my name. Now get out of here before you make this worse. I stared at her for one long second, then said loud enough for the nearest few guests to hear, worse than stealing from sick children to pay for hotel rooms with your affair partner? The gasp came instantly. Heads turned. A woman dropped a plastic flute of sparkling cider. Lorna's face drained to paper white. That's a lie, she snapped, stepping closer. You're twisting everything. This isn't about the money. It's about you being a passive, pathetic, don't you dare, I cut in, voice rising now. Don't you dare stand here in front of your parents and pretend this is about me being boring or predictable. You lied. You used me. You used your friends, your donors, your entire fake little community project to feed your ego and bankroll your fantasy. You weaponized sympathy and called it empowerment. I was dying inside, she shouted. You were a ghost. You were always 2 steps behind me, living in numbers, routines, spreadsheets. I needed someone who made me feel alive. So you chose a man who let you scam cancer donors for dinners and hotel rooms? I said, voice like steel. You wanted to feel alive? You could have gone skydiving. You could have taken a damn art class. Instead, you dug a hole and buried everything we had in it. By now, people had fully turned. Her father was standing frozen. Her mother had tears in her eyes. Sharon looked like she might step forward, then didn't. Lorna's voice cracked, but her volume didn't drop. You're painting yourself as the victim, but you were never there for me. You made me feel invisible, Gerald. Like I was just the background character in your precious routines. You think silence is noble? You think being emotionally constipated is a virtue? I stepped closer. No. I think not cheating is a virtue. I think not faking budget reports is a virtue. I think not sleeping with someone behind your husband's back while still using his name to build your public persona is a baseline requirement for being a decent human being. Someone in the crowd muttered, wow. Lorna turned to them, frantic now. You don't know what it was like living with him. Always calm, always judging, never passionate, never real. He made me feel like a houseplant. And you made me feel like a wallet with a pulse, I replied. Except now the pulse has stopped and the money's gone. She turned, spotted her affair partner across the yard. He had made the mistake of showing up. You told me we'd handle this together. She barked at him. He looked like he wanted to melt into the grass. I didn't know he had recordings, he stammered. I didn't know it was this deep. Don't you dare back out now, she screamed. You said, but he was already walking away, brushing past 2 shocked guests who moved to let him pass without a word. She turned back to me, wild-eyed, trembling. This is psychological warfare, she gasped. This is abuse. You're trying to ruin me. No, I said clearly. I just let everyone hear you without your filters on. The rest was gravity doing its job. You think they'll forgive you? She snarled, pointing at her parents. You think they won't remember how cold and calculated you've always been? You think they don't know how manipulative you are? I looked at her parents. Her mother stepped forward. He told us the truth, Lorna. Calmly. With evidence. We asked for your side. You said it was all a misunderstanding. But we listened to the recording. Lorna staggered back as if the wind had punched her. You listened? She whispered. Her mother nodded slowly, tears falling now. You stopped being our daughter the moment you turned your marriage into a strategy. That broke her. Her knees buckled slightly. Someone reached to steady her. She slapped their hand away. You all wanted perfect, she screamed. I tried to be what you all needed. I smiled for every party. I built everything. I carried this image for you. And now you act like I'm trash because I cracked under pressure. Her voice echoed against the canopy. A child nearby covered their ears. A man pulled out his phone, not to answer a call, but to film. I said nothing. I didn't need to. I just stood there. She looked at me one last time, mascara smeared, breath shallow, mouth opening to say something she couldn't quite finish. But I had nothing more to give. I didn't walk away. I stood in the storm she made, untouched. And she knew in that moment, the image, the power, the game, it was over. For good. She lost her job within 3 days of the brunch. Officially, the hospital called it a mutual separation. But the truth was unavoidable. Donor confidence shattered, committee members withdrew, and no board wants to be associated with whispers of financial misconduct tied to children's oncology. Her inbox dried up overnight. Clients ghosted her. Friends who once posted filtered selfies with her under hashtags like #BossQueen and #CommunityAngel deleted photos and went quiet. Even Sharon, who once cheered her through every manipulative scheme with a glass of Chardonnay and a smirk, blocked her. The affair partner, predictably, disappeared. No calls, no explanations, not even a goodbye. Last I heard, he took a position overseas. Maybe he knew the tidal wave was coming. Maybe he just never intended to stay once the lights came on. Her parents issued a public statement supporting the hospital, not her. Her mother changed her number. Her father returned the anniversary gift she had sent, unopened. She moved out of the house 2 weeks after the final confrontation, not with boxes or dignity, but with 2 plastic suitcases, and an Uber waiting silently in the driveway. I didn't watch her go. I didn't need to. The silence that followed was enough. A month passed. I heard rumors. She was living in a small rental 2 towns over, working at a boutique candle store, the kind of place that smells like denial and lavender. She wore sunglasses indoors. When people from our old neighborhood saw her, they crossed the street or looked away, as if shame was contagious. Then, one evening, she showed up at my front door. Not announced, not proud. She didn't knock at first. Just stood there, hands shaking, eyes red. When I finally opened it, she tried to smile. It broke in half. She began, but the words died before they could find form. She looked different, smaller, her hair unbrushed, her coat too thin for the weather. I've been thinking, she finally said. About us. About everything. About how I ruined it. And I know you don't owe me anything. I know I burned every bridge and then tried to sell the ashes. But I loved you, Gerald. I really did. I got lost. I needed something and I looked in all the wrong places. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't know who I am without you. Her voice cracked, and for the first time in her life, she didn't try to hide it. Please, she whispered, I don't want to be this alone. I looked at her for a long moment. Not with anger. Not even with sadness. Just clarity. Because standing in front of me wasn't my wife. She was the echo of a woman who made one decision too many with her eyes wide open. She chose this. I didn't hand her the shovel. I just stepped aside and let her dig. I nodded slowly, then stepped back inside and closed the door without a word. The next morning, she texted me. Just 5 words. I still love you, Gerald. I waited. Let the silence stretch. Then typed my reply. Strange. I don't even remember your name anymore. She didn't respond, and I haven't heard from her since. Thank you for listening to my story. I needed someone to hear it. Tell me, where are you listening from? And did it feel worth the journey?